Standard 6, Instructional Practice. Accomplished teachers of English language learners design supportive learning environments based on careful analysis of their students' characteristics and on the linguistic and academic demands of school. Teachers provide effective language and content instruction that expands students' linguistic repertoire in English, allows them to achieve academic success, and inspires them to acquire skills that will serve them throughout their lives. Preparing for effective instruction. In preparing for effective instruction, accomplished teachers of English language learners analyze students' strengths and needs, including academic and linguistic abilities. By connecting with students' lives and showing concern for them as individuals, teachers gain students' trust and confidence, encourage them to experiment with language and content learning in English, and focus them toward positive interactions and independent learning. Teachers incorporate students' cultures into their instruction, build upon students' accomplishments, and communicate a vision for success to all students. In addition to considering the needs of students when planning for instruction, teachers also consider learning objectives as they gather a rich array of instructional resources and determine appropriate teaching strategies. They identify the linguistic, cultural, and conceptual demands of texts and tasks and select varied instructional approaches that enable students to deepen their knowledge of English, increase their access to curriculum, and enhance their enjoyment of school. Integrating language and content. Accomplished teachers know that learning English takes time and that learning academic English cannot be deferred until students have sufficient mastery of the new language. Consequently, teachers organize instruction around both content and language learning goals. Teachers may derive language objectives from a set of subject area and learning standards, or they may select content area topics and learning tasks to support communicative and functional language objectives. Integrating language and content instruction occurs along a continuum of emphasis on either language or content. Accomplished teachers may plan to integrate topics from different disciplines and organize them around broad conceptual themes. Planning for thematically coherent, content-based language teaching allows teachers to take advantage of the natural redundancy of language, whereby the language used to discuss related concepts, such as vocabulary as well as sentence structure, is reinforced through multiple opportunities for exposure and practice. In addition to planning age-appropriate, thematically linked instruction, accomplished teachers purposefully plan to integrate students' use of listening, speaking, reading, writing, and visual literacy in class activities and home assignments. Building students' prior knowledge, experiences, and interests. Accomplished teachers know how to make difficult concepts more comprehensible for English language learners by designing instruction that builds on prior knowledge and experiences, personal strengths, interests, and linguistic abilities. Teachers maximize opportunities for students to explore and discuss central ideas in the curriculum by selecting major themes and guiding questions that encourage students to build connections to their prior knowledge and experiences. For example, teachers might ask newcomer students, literate in their primary language but at a beginning level of English proficiency, to write stories in their primary language about personal experiences, translate their stories into English with the assistance of peers, and then share their stories with classmates by reading aloud or by adding the stories to an online collection. When teaching about early settlers and pioneers in U.S. history, teachers might incorporate some students and their families' immigration or migration experiences. Selecting materials and resources. Accomplished teachers strategically select sources to expose students to increasingly complex language. Teachers plan assignments to provide resources appropriate to students' English language proficiency levels and ensure that students have access to reading materials. To support students' development of academic English, teachers offer a wide range of literacy experiences that expose students to linguistic features characteristic of content area texts, as well as of meaningful tasks and interactions. Accomplished teachers of English language learners select, adapt, and create a range of diverse materials. They look beyond textbooks into other school resources and the community, seeking opportunities to enrich students' learning experiences. Whenever possible, teachers identify bilingual or bicultural school staff and community members to support literacy instruction. Teachers may invite family and community volunteers to read bilingual books and work with students individually or in small groups to develop reading and writing skills in the students' primary languages, to promote students' cognitive development, and to facilitate transfer of literacy skills from primary languages to English. Accomplished teachers working with English language learners are sensitive to dialectical differences in primary language materials and therefore seek instructional resources from the diverse regions represented by their students. The purposeful selection of challenging materials appropriate to students' primary language and literacy levels and their English language abilities and content learning needs maximizes their opportunities to learn and use English. Accomplished teachers understand that all students benefit from instruction representing multiple perspectives, and they know that English language learners need to see themselves and their experiences meaningfully reflected in the curriculum. Teachers are also aware that conventional materials may be limited and even inaccurate in portrayals of the social, political, and historical contexts of Indigenous people and other ethnic or cultural groups. Therefore, teachers of English language learners critically review their curriculum and, as needed, supplement and modify materials and instructional tasks to include students' perspectives. Accomplished teachers are familiar with and know how to incorporate a wide range of current technological resources into their instruction to help develop or reinforce students' learning of language, culture, and concepts related to the curriculum. To inform their efforts and incorporate technology, teachers first assess students' computer literacy and knowledge of relevant terminology. Teachers may infuse linguistically, culturally, and age-appropriate technology to provide activities that extend students' learning and offer academic support, such as online publishing or research. Teachers may use websites or internet-based resources for relevant video clips and pictures, for example, to build students' background knowledge. In order to build background knowledge, accomplished teachers seek resources and plan ways to use technology creatively to facilitate students' learning. Teachers recognize, however, that age-appropriate literature, textbooks, and websites in English may require levels of language proficiency higher than many of their students possess. Resources written in simpler English may not engage students' interest, and materials in students' primary languages may not be available or appropriate. Teachers prepare for instruction by acquiring a variety of multimedia resources for classroom and school library collections in English and in other languages to support their students' language and literacy development, as well as to facilitate their access to the curriculum. Teaching collaboratively. Accomplished teachers collaborate with a wide range of instructional colleagues, both formally and informally. They identify the best partners to support students' needs and collaborate with them in planning, teaching, assessing, and reflecting on their instruction. Teachers work with staff and school administrators to establish common planning times and use innovative and effective strategies to confer and plan instruction with colleagues. In collaboration with content area teachers, teachers of English language learners ensure that English language objectives are taught explicitly and appropriately with content learning objectives. Collaboration with content area teachers may involve both teachers examining the curriculum for linguistic, cultural, and conceptual demands to plan appropriate instruction. Accomplished bilingual teachers of English language learners might work with content area teachers to identify important concepts and key vocabulary and to preview and reinforce instruction in the student's primary language. Teachers may also work with reading specialists to assist students in identifying appropriate reading strategies so that students can meet the linguistic demands of textbooks and learn essential concepts. Managing learning in the classroom. Accomplished teachers plan for effective classroom management and practices for English language learners. Teachers seek orderly classrooms so that spontaneous engagement can occur and imagination and learning can flourish. Teachers anticipate possible concerns related to cultural identity as well as intercultural conflicts among students and they analyze and employ effective ways of preventing or mitigating the effects of such concerns or conflicts. For example, when planning to incorporate group work, teachers determine whether pair work versus large group configurations provides the most productive and effective learning opportunities. In addition, when establishing groups, teachers consider students' English language proficiency levels, primary language and cultural backgrounds, and personal characteristics such as gender and personality. Teachers distinguish between student misbehavior that undermines classroom civility and exuberance that adds vitality to learning experiences. When disciplinary action is necessary, teachers act promptly, equitably, and with minimal disruption to the class. Discipline strategies set within parameters of school policy are sensitive to the cultural norms familiar to students and allow students to retain their dignity. Teachers work to include all students in congenial and equitable learning environments. Accomplished teachers effectively manage students' learning time. Teachers know when to extend time devoted to an activity, and just as importantly, when to curtail or conclude an activity for maximum language learning. Teachers establish highly structured, orderly learning routines that communicate to students what is expected of them, thus helping students to focus on successful language learning opportunities and to feel confident about participating in class. Teachers plan instruction that uses time efficiently and enables them to adapt as circumstances dictate in order to address language and content objectives and meet students' unanticipated needs and learning interests.